And welcome everybody to the Huddle, KGUN9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Parris. Pat, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jason.
We're going to get to the Adia Barnes situation and the coaching change for Arizona women's basketball. But first, we're going to bring in today's guest, and he is Billy Back, the head coach of the Tucson Sugar Skulls. The Sugar Skulls have their home opener against Jacksonville this week at the Tucson Arena. Billy, Pat, and Jason here on the KGUN9 studios. Good afternoon. I understand we've got some breaking news. You've made a trade that you can tell us about.
Yeah, we traded for a quarterback by the name of Anitas Dennis from Benedict College. We had some quarterback hiccups in camp with some injuries and scrambled to try to make do for the first game. Didn't quite get it done, so we've made some moves to bring in some guys that can spin the rock.
Yeah, this guy, I just looked real quick when you mentioned his name before we came on, and he did some nice things in college. How does that translate into the game of indoor football for you?
Well, I mean, guys like Drew Powell, Sneed, and TJ Edwards all had to be a rookie at some point. He's got to be developed. So he's got the base. He's got the abilities. He can move. He can run. He can throw. So we're excited to try to develop him and get him right.
Coach Back, you haven't had too many losing seasons in your career personally, but then last year wasn't a great one for the Sugar Skulls. What changes were made in the offseason that you went into this year trying to do differently, roster-wise or otherwise?
Well, our first move, we traded for a kicker, and he's pretty good. So we had a rough kicking season last year. That kind of made us second guess, fourth downs near the goal line. Probably should have made some kicks late in the year. We didn't. And we added a bunch of guys that we felt that are our caliber players. We had a late start last year when it came to recruiting, but at the same time, we had too much turnover during the season. It's on me as a coach not developing the quarterback receiver chemistry that we had. We were second in the league in rushing, but 16th in the league in passing and scoring, and that's never going to get it done. So defensively, like what we got, again, we had two major injuries in camp to two quarterbacks on non-contact plays, which one was a stud, one was an all-time leading passer in the league, which was a vet, and left us with a guy we were looking to move on from day two in camp. So we're kind of handcuffed. But, just building the roster and adding the coaching staff in this season with Anson Yarborough and Demetrius Briggs has made a world of difference for us. And our outcome in the first game versus Arizona isn't going to define the team that we have. We got a lot of good players, and we battled back in the third quarter. We just got to be able to throw it in the ocean from the beach.
Yeah, you lost 56-28. Probably not indicative. I was there, Billy, at the game, and you guys played a really strong third quarter. I know we kind of kid around about when coaches try to say, "Yeah, but we won the third quarter." But there are signs there, I think, of your team competing against, obviously, the Rattlers, the defending IFL champs.
Yeah, we battled back down 22 at halftime, got it within 7 at one point, had a chance to get back within 7. I made a bad call at the goal line, should have just powered it in. Called a fast twitch play for a slow twitch quarterback, and it just didn't work. They were all on it. And it would have put the pressure back on the Rattlers. And like I said, who knows what happens after that. But again, our guys battled back. We fought through adversity, and we like our defense. We like our offensive line. It's just a fact of just securing that quarterback spot, which we like this kid coming in.
There's a player on your roster who is, as we're joined by Billy Back, head coach of the Tucson Sugar Skulls. The Sugar Skulls host the Jacksonville Sharks this Saturday at the Tucson Arena for their home opener. There's a player on your roster who is familiar to a lot of football fans here in Tucson, Drew Dixon, who went to Sabino and played some at the U of A. How did the story come about for him to come to the Sugar Skulls? Did you reach out to him? Did he reach out to you? Where did you learn about Drew Dixon from?
What's crazy is I got a call from the Iowa Barnstormers head coach, Dave Mogensen, saying I got a receiver here that wants to be close to home, lives in Tucson. Gave me his information, and I looked him up, reached out to him, got him to sign with us. He mentioned he wanted to play quarterback, and it's crazy. He's one of our backup quarterbacks. He's a do-it-all type of guy. He sat up and kicked a 40-yard field goal for us. He long snapped last game. He blocked his tail off. He made some mistakes during the game. Collided with Sapp Lynch on one play, which was kind of embarrassing, but that's his first game. But he's a great first-class kid. Very quiet. I got to let him know that we're not in church out here. You can talk a little bit louder and raise your voice if you want. But he's just a first-class kid. He's a four-tool player for us right now, so he'll be with us for a while.
How important, Billy, is it for a team, an indoor football team in a town like Tucson, to have a local kid as one of your players, and hopefully he can become kind of a featured player at some point if he grows into that position. How important is that to have?
I mean, in a perfect world, if we get it, local players and fill our roster with local players, we would. You know, we reached out to quite a bit University of Arizona players last season in the off season. You know, what hurts us is this NIL stuff. You know, we're offering them peanuts opposed to what they're getting in college, and so it's a fact you got to find those guys that still have the passion to play. You know, and Drew has that passion. So if we can find more guys from local high schools, local colleges that went away to college and came back, you know, that's ideal because it puts butts in seats. It's fan recognition. Yeah. And, you know, having Drew, you know, he's, you know, we always say salary cap guys that are local, you don't have to house them, but he brings more to the table than that. He's, like I said, he's quarterback, receiver, long snapper, holder, kicker. He blocked his tail off on special teams and made some good hits on the backer last season. You know, so it's, you know, to get guys like that, you know, that's our goal, is to find as many local guys as we can to have that kind of pride, sense of pride of the city and the state. And, you know, it goes further with players.
Yeah, and he's a good one, Bill. He went to my high school, Sabino High School, and they went to the state championship. So he did a nice job when he was a SaberCat for sure.
Yeah.
What is the reason that so many players on the roster are from, all, not just all the Indoor Football League roster, so many players are from small schools? Is it because perhaps they were overlooked? They were not at major, you know, power universities? What is the reason that the roster is made up? It doesn't mean there aren't really good players, but you see so many of the Wisconsin Whitewaters and schools like that, as opposed to, say, you know, Ohio State on a roster.
You got to think those kids, D3s, weren't pampered. You know, they won it. You know, they have a chance to go against a guy that was a D1 player. That's their Super Bowl. It's their chance to prove themselves. I'll tell a story about in 2013. I had a kid from TCU, was an All-American. Wayne Daniels went to the New York Jets, came and played for us, and just got his butt kicked. He thought it was below him. You know, we cut him. He came back the next season looking like the kid. It was a TCU, and then had a dominant season in 2014. But, you know, those kids from big schools look at this level as like it's a step down. I mean, really, it's just a stepping stone up, because they're not playing football anywhere else besides here. But those D3 kids, those JUCO kids, D2 kids, you know, they're not kind of, you know, we had a couple of Ohio State guys last year. They're, you know, good friends of mine, but at the same time, they've got bells and whistles up there that we don't have, that they look at like, oh, this is a step down. Where the D3 kids, they're out there playing on gravel fields, you know, with PVC pipes for uprights. Yeah. And they look at this like it's the next best thing. But those guys that excel at this game get the opportunity to go to the next level. We put 82 players out last season alone into the UFL, CFL, and NFL from the IFL.
Yeah.
And it's a stepping stone. And so once the player realizes that this is an opportunity, and they put all they got into, we got a couple of D1 guys that look at it like this is my next opportunity, which they bought in. We've got a great group of guys here. But there's guys out there that overlook it, that, you know, that want this extra money, that think they deserve it, and they really don't, because they're not playing anywhere else. They got to earn it.
Billy, this Sugar Skulls organization has been to the playoffs multiple times. Hasn't really had a lot of success that way. I know you were disappointed with last season, but how do you grow this sport beyond the terrific niche, you know, couple thousand that come every week? How do you grow this sport in this town?
I think we got to get out in the community more. I think, you know, we had a low number of events out last year, out in the town. We weren't in any schools. You know, I think we got to do a better job of being in the community's eye, you know, and being at events. If there's something downtown, we need to have a tent set up. We need to be there. Players need to be there. Coaches need to be there. We need to be out in public. You know, there's no reason we shouldn't have had a bigger presence at the Snoop Dogg Bowl, or the Snoop Dogg Bowl this season. Just, you know, things that we got to do better at just being in public when there's a mass crowd, that they see the Sugar Skulls. We also got to win. You know, they always say, you know, win your home games, lose your away games, but, you know, you want to win every game. You want to put that, you know, that dominant, you know, stamp on things by making the playoffs and winning games in the playoffs. And people are kind of attracted to a winner. That season's not going to get it done. And if we don't, you know, start off faster this season, you know, it's, you know, I say it's not where you start, it's where you finish, but you got to get to that point at some time. So, you know, we just got to do a better job of being more visible in the public, and, you know, having our players wear this logo out everywhere we go, and just seeing, hey, what's that? Well, the Tucson Sugar Skulls. You know, we play at the convention center. Come out, check us out. I mean, I don't think we do enough of that.
And the title game this year is in Tucson, so that helps. Right. That helps too with everything. Well, hi, Billy back. Thank you so much for a few minutes here. The Tucson Sugar Skulls hosting Jacksonville this weekend at the Tucson Arena for their home opener. Check it out. It's a pretty good product, and It's a lot of fun out there in the Tucson arena. So good luck
Thanks,
this
Billy.
weekend and the rest of the way. We'll be talking to you along the way.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. All right. That was Billy Back, head coach of the Tucson Sugar Skulls. Pat, they start this week, and at least for their home games, they're only one after the loss to the Rattlers. You know, the other big story, too, that happened over the week, and not a big surprise, is Adia Barnes leaving for SMU. And we're going to go to our Huddle poll question here. Adia Barnes leaving for SMU. And so how do you feel about this? Okay. A, B, C, or D? Thanks to Coach Adia for a great 9 years. B, well, let me see who that's hired. You know, I'll make my decision there. C, this is not good for U of A. There's definitely some people who feel that way. And D, not a big loss. Well, maybe some people will vote that too. And we'll have the results at the end there. I am in camp B. I'm thinking you're an A, Pat, but I'm in B.
You nailed it. Although there's a little bit of the first three, I would say, A, B, and C. I don't think it's good for the university. I think when you have, you know, kind of this legendary player who goes off to the WNBA and then becomes an assistant coach, and then she gets the job back here, you think, what a perfect situation. And for about 3 years, it looked like the perfect situation. So I think it's not good for the U of A to lose that, you know, that kind of mystique, that kind of really cool story. I will wait and see who they hire. I find it hard to believe that they're going to have a better fit, at least early on, like we saw with Adia. So I do thank her for the great 9 years, or at least, you know, six or seven great years. And it was fun to watch the trajectory upward, and then they reached the pinnacle of the national championship game, Jason, and they were one shot away from winning a national championship. And then it just went wrong. And it just
Harry shouldn't have taken that shot. She had 3 players on her. Somebody was open.
Even Michael Jordan passed the ball. They got the ball to Steve Kerr, right? That's
right.
what I said too at the time. But
what happened was, she, by her own admission, she mismanaged the roster a little bit. Now, this was her first time as head coach, and they never really had a deep team. But all of a sudden, she's making national news because she's pumping at halftime of the Final Four game. And so the next year, everybody wants to come play for her. And she had too many players on the roster. They start losing a couple of games. People are upset. I should be playing. And it created some morale issues. She then mismanaged the roster a little bit on the other end last year, when they only had 6 or 7 available players for various reasons. But Pat, you know, I really like Adia very much. But I don't know how we can't say she didn't have too many fallings out with players. You know, some of them were more public than others. Certainly the most one was probably Maya Nagy, but there were a lot of falling outs, and I just don't think that she connected with the 5-star greatest players in the country that she was able to recruit coming off the championship game when they got here. I think she just connects a little bit more with the gritty players like her. She was a little bit under-recruited, a little bit undersized. That's why she came here out of San Diego. And I think there was just something missing there.
And you see it all the time, Jason. You know, you'll see superstar players who try to become coaches, and they almost always film. As I look at Wayne Gretzky tried to be an NHL coach, and it was brutal. When you're one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time, it's hard to connect with people that don't have your talent. And the reverse can be true as well. When you're a scrappy player who in a lot of ways overachieved, like Adia Barnes did, way undersized, and just did a terrific job with the skills and just outworked people. So she was better off probably building a roster around those types of players, and maybe she had more success that way. You know, Erin McDonald was highly skilled, but she was undersized, and she just had grit, right?
She wasn't a top recruit.
What's that?
I mean, look at who her favorite player is on this roster last 2 years, Isis Bay. You know, it's not a star player.
So there's a trouble with connecting in some ways, but I also think NIL played into it too. And you know, you have to learn how to have that mix of player relationships with paying the players. And she you know, that all kind of intersected at the same time for her, and it didn't go well. And maybe it'll go better for her at SMU in that sense. I know she's not happy about the the reported amount that women's basketball was going to get of the salary cap or the NIL cap of $20.5 million. It was going to be a small percentage, not unlike most schools, though. It was just she probably thought they deserved more, and so that all added up to her leaving for sure.
What do you think about no goodbye from her on social media? For somebody who's very active on social media, you could say she kind of hinted as such, in her last news conference after the loss to NAU, but there was no, hey, thank you, Wildcat fans, for a great 9 years. Does that? I didn't see her Instagram. I only saw an X, so maybe it's there that I didn't see.
No, there. When I checked earlier today, there still was not. Now that could as we're talking, I'll look, but I don't know if that's because she hasn't officially been announced at SMU, and that comes tomorrow, right?
No, yeah, but it's already all the SMU's announced it though, so I don't buy that.
I don't know why. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why. I think it's disappointing because if there was a falling out, even if there was, we don't know all the inner workings. We hear rumors. But even if there was a falling out with Desiree Reed-Francois, the athletic director, and they didn't see eye to eye, that doesn't mean you discount what did they have, 6,000 average this past season. They were up to 7,000 or 8,000 a couple of years before. There's a hardcore group of fans and a city that really got on board with
and there was nobody at those games before she got here.
Exactly. I mean, you could walk in and pick any seat. So my point is, she owes it to the fans. They deserve to have some kind of an explanation from Adia Barnes at some point. Will that be tomorrow, after tomorrow? I don't know. It's disappointing. I haven't seen anything yet. And I'm like you, Jason. There is not a person that I got along with better and had, just seemed like you could have a connection with her, and she cared.
Yeah, no, she wanted a relationship. Some coaches don't. She did.
Some don't, and that's fine. But she went out of her way to even ask you questions about yourself. So she made you feel comfortable and made you feel important. And I think she did that with all the fans that she met, and that's why there was a connection. So why all of a sudden the ghosting or the cold shoulder? I don't know.
What are you supposed to do if you're Desiree Reed-Francois, the Arizona athletic director? I probably would have done the same thing in the sense that now she's making a lot of money because of she took the team to the championship game. They raised her salary. Then Baylor wanted her salary went even more, 4 years worth of raises. She's making a lot. They're middle of the pack, not making the tournament, and they're not recruiting the same type of players. So it's hard for an AD to give somebody a big contract extension on that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
It's her and the fans and what she's built with the community, the Arizona women's basketball community, and all the fans that attended. But it's hard to give somebody a contract extension off a loss to NAU in the WBIT.
Yeah.
Now there was a fantastic candidate in the UNLV coach, Linda LaRocque, I believe is her name, who Desiree Reed-Francois hired at UNLV, went to Stanford, has done tremendous at UNLV. She's actually from Las Vegas, though, so she doesn't want the job. Obviously, Brenda Frese, there's no reason for her to come here. She's taken Maryland, I think, to the Final Four. I believe so. Former U of A player who's the Maryland head coach. So there isn't really somebody that kind of stands out,
that's where the athletic director, they generally have a short list of every one of the coaches, one of the sports programs. They usually have a list, or they have the connections to find that. And I think it goes back to this, Jason. Since the start of collegiate athletics, athletic directors who come in always assess what's going on with all of their coaches. And when those coaches, they see them underperforming and they see a contract that was getting up to where Diaz was getting, a decision has to be made. And it's easier for somebody who comes in from the outside, like Desiree Reed-Francois, to, after 1 year, say, this just isn't working. We're going to move on from somebody who has attained legendary status in Tucson in the form of Adia Barnes. It's easier for her to make that decision than it would be somebody who maybe was here when she was hired, or even was the one that hired him, although Greg Byrne has since left. But the point is, it doesn't surprise me that she made this move. it's just disappointing that she felt she had to make this move because of where the program is now, say where it was 3 or 4 years ago.
9 years ago, when this position opened up, somebody came to me, Pat, and said that they were disappointed that Todd Holthouse wasn't seriously considered, if he wasn't. And he's a former Arizona Wildcat assistant coach, and he's been the coach of, he's from here, took Flowing Wells, maybe he either coached there or went there. Obviously, he took Pima to the national championship game, this past season, has a ton of success, known in the community, easy to get along with. I don't think he'll have issues with players. Is he too far removed from the college game? I don't know. I think he's worth an interview. It won't cost anything. Sure. And there's some other name. That name hasn't been floated out. That's just one that was floated out to me 9 years ago, right? And then there's some other names that have been floated out. So we'll see. I'm sure they're searching really hard. It's just, I think the biggest frustration is that you have to start over. And it's one thing to have to have started over 9 years ago when you were starting from where you were starting from, when they were going 1-15, 2-14 every year in the Pac-12. Now you're starting over after you were on top of the mountain 4 years ago.
Right. It was
you were a shot away from the national championship with everyone wanting to come play here. Yep. Adia had the best high school players in the country at every grade lined up to come here. Not to mention every transfer.
It's a head scratcher.
That's where they were 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. I think it is. The one thing that I'll say about, my sense of Desiree Reed-Francois and the little, I don't know her all that well, but I think I know a little bit about her. I know that she's passionate about her roots and connections to the U of A. Being here in the late 90s, here when the men won the national championship, Mike Candrea started, was winning national championships in softball. So when I say she's an outsider, I only mean she's coming from the outside after having been gone from the university since the late 90s. But I do think she has a really good sense of the Wildcat, way and University of Arizona. And so if there is a candidate with Arizona connections out there, I think she'll give maybe a little edge to that. So it would not surprise me if she found somebody somewhere with a former player or a coach with ties. We'll have to see.
All right, I got one last question for you, and then we're going to bring in our Huddle poll question and wrap it up here. Why do you think that the games involving Caitlin Clark got twice the views that the ones involving Paige Beckers did this year in the final?
There was much more of a buzz about Caitlin Clark last year. And
is she that much of a better player than Paige Beckers?
I think she is. I do. Look, Paige Beckers, she's an amazing player, and she's going to be a terrific pro. I mean, she's going to be really good. But you're talking about the greatest scorer of all time in women's college basketball, and one of the great 3-point shooters of all time, men or women, in college basketball. And I think that played it up. I think the Angel Reese thing, elevated all that. There was you pick a.
Iowa's not there every year like UConn is.
Right, and so you either pick a side, you're Angel Reese, or you're, and you're right. Iowa hasn't been there, and Caitlin Clark elevated the Hawkeyes to a level they've never quite attained before, and they weren't there again this year.
Gotcha. All right, let's finish it up with our Huddle poll question. We're involving Adia Barnes, and that is your thoughts on how do you feel about Arizona women's basketball head coach Adia Barnes leaving for SMU? Thanks for a great 9 years. That's the plurality. No majority here, but a plurality. Let's see who's hired. That's kind of the camp I was in. This is not good. Yeah, and then not a big loss for U of A, so a few people a little upset, that she's leaving, but it's a loss when you're drawing 6,000 people to a women's basketball game.
Well, if you ask this question, let's say Adia Barnes, remember she was going to go to Baylor. Baylor offered a ton of money to go to Baylor right after after she took them to the national championship game. If you'd asked this question right after this,
this is not good.
It would have been not big loss. Would have been 0. I'm pretty sure. Right. But now, after the last couple of years,
the other thing I'd say is there were. Maybe not as much this year, but there were too many games over the few years where it just seemed like it was so hard to score a bucket. Such an emphasis on defense. And I said to somebody, I feel like she'd rather lose a game 60-58 than win 90-80. And I asked her once if you could put too much emphasis on defense, and she said no. The best defensive player in the country, Ari, took us to the national championship game. I think it's a little bit taxing sometimes, but listen, I'm not a head coach. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Ask Houston fans today about last night. The one thing they couldn't do in that last 5 minutes is score. The Houston Cougars would have been national champions had they just scored another bucket, and they just couldn't get a bucket at the end of that game. And that was disappointing, especially those of us that picked Houston and lost our keg on 9 pool because
I was rooting for Houston just because they beat Arizona twice, Big 12, the whole deal.
And
the look on Kelvin Sampson's face, the way that he lost. Oh, he thought it was his year, and then they lost and they couldn't get a shot off. Yikes!
Yeah, just couldn't get a shot off. I did appreciate them beating Duke, though. I'm not a big fan of Duke, so.
All right. Well, thanks to our guest Billy Back of the Tucson Sugar Skulls. For Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr. Thanks everybody for watching this week's Huddle, KGUN 9 streaming sports talk show. We'll see you right back here same time next week.